Welcome to Conversations with Big Rich. This is an interview-style podcast. These interviewed are all involved in the off-road industry. Being involved, like all of my guests are, is a lifestyle, not just a job. I talk to past, present, and future legends, as well as business owners, employees, media, and land use warriors. Men and women who have found their way into this exciting and addictive lifestyle we call off-road. We discuss their personal history, struggles, successes, and reboots. We dive into what drives them to stay active in off-road. We all hope to shed some light on how to find a path into this world that we live and love and call off-road.
Whether you're crawling the Red Rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Have you seen 4Low magazine yet? 4Low magazine is a high-quality, well-written, four-wheel drive-focused magazine for the enthusiast market. If you still love the idea of a printed magazine, something to save and read at any time, 4Low is the magazine for you. 4Low cannot be found in stores, but you can have it delivered to your home or place of business. Visit 4lowmagazine.com to order your subscription today. On this episode of Conversations is a guy that went from band camp to Hammertown, with many stops in between. That's right, I welcome Alan Johnson. Alan, how are you doing today?
Well, this one time at band camp, I'm doing really good.
Excellent.
I'm doing really good, Rich.
Well, cool. Let's talk about the very beginning. Where were you born and raised?
I was actually born in Anaheim, California.
What?
I lived there until I was 7. Yeah. Then my parents, in their infinite wisdom, decided the late 70s in California was not where they wanted to raise kids and moved me to Arkansas, which is what I consider home. So I grew up in Arkansas.
Right.
I was born in Anaheim.
I thought you were Arkansas all the way. Okay. And
yeah, well, it's interesting though, because the high school I went to, you can walk down the halls, you can see my parents' graduation pictures, my grandparents' graduation pictures. So again, Arkansas is home. But yeah, born in California.
So your parents started in Arkansas, went to California. You were born there, and then you guys moved back.
Exactly. So, and that's where I'm at now, actually. Life kind of has a way of bringing you all the way back around. So I am back in Arkansas these days.
Well, I can tell you I will not be going back to my hometown, but I am in my home state right now. But not forever.
I gotcha. No, it's just funny how where you grow up imprints you to a certain extent. And our kids grew up in Arizona. That's actually where you and I met, Rich, when I was in Arizona.
Right.
But they'd heard so many stories about Arkansas that Ivan ended up going to the University of Arkansas, and Kate graduated university here too. So both my kids claim Arkansas, even though they grew up in Arizona. So it's just funny how it shaped you.
Yeah, my neighborhood that I grew up in is no longer like it was when I grew up. It's, San Francisco Bay Area, and there's been a lot of immigrants into the area. Not saying that that's a bad thing, but it's completely changed from when I was a kid. I mean, just driving through the area, you can really tell the difference.
Absolutely.
So, what drove your parents to go from Arkansas to California?
Well, have you ever flown into John Wayne International, Orange County?
Yes.
There's a Chevron station right across the street that my grandpa opened in 1968. And when my dad graduated high school, he wanted him to come out and run the gas station with him. So they got out there in the late 60s. It's funny, a lot of what I do is on the computer these days, whether it's social media or graphic design or whatever. Well, in high school, my dad took typing because that's where all the pretty girls were. Right. Really, really sound life plan. So when he got drafted in 70 for Vietnam, he could type 74 words a minute. So they put him in radio teletype and send him to Germany. So to this day, he claimed typing saved his life. And so when we were in high school, he made us take typing, and then computers came along and all that type of stuff. But yeah, I was actually almost born in Germany. My mom got back to the States about 3 weeks before I was born. But yeah, they were out there 68 to 78, and 79 we moved back to Arkansas. I was very impressed. I was allowed to play on the grass back in Arkansas. That was a big no-no in SoCal in the mid 70s.
Why was that?
I don't know. I think people were a lot more uptight. You couldn't get on people's grass. Neighbors were way different.
Oh,
And
neighbors,
again,
yes. Okay.
yeah, having grown up, in the South as a kid, your whole backyard is just a creek and woods and fields, and so that was just a whole fascinating world for me to go from, again, Southern California to the country, and it was magic.
Yeah, because you went from city or suburbia probably to the country. Absolutely.
Yep.
And the forests are brambles too.
Oh yeah, no, it was the greatest thing in the world for a kid, though, especially with a kid with an overactive imagination such as myself. We weren't around a lot of people, but you could have any adventure you wanted. You built forts. It's interesting because those feelings as a kid are part of what got me into off-roading as an adult, because you can be out running a trail and it's new to you, and darn well 1,000 people have been down that trail, but it's the first time for you. And so I feel like I'm a 10-year-old exploring again. Ooh, what's down here? What's over there? And it's just a sense of wonder every time I go out that I do trace back to those early childhood days where everything was just a sense of wonder. It was amazing to grow up in the country.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I like I said, I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, suburbia of San Francisco, and
Mm-hmm.
it was we had a large, well, it's not large city park, but the city park transitioned into a county park, and the county park was pretty large, and we were able to, it was, if you wanted to play Daniel Boone and Davy Crockett, or
Yes, sir.
Cowboys and Indians or whatever you wanted to do, the exploring up there was awesome. Going all the rabbit trails and the deer trails and following the creek and just figuring out where every little climbable tree was at,
No,
looking for caves, even though the caves were culverts.
I know, but they were caves to a kid. I remember, there was a tree that had fallen over and it had a split in it, and so it was just a stump at that point. But we had turned that into our fort, into castles, into spaceships, all kinds of stuff. And my brother and I went back and saw it probably 10 years ago, and it's probably even up to our waist, right? It's this itty bitty little stump, but to us, it was friggin' huge back in the day, and we're like, huh. That didn't age well, but it was pretty magic when we were kids.
Yeah, Shelley and I talked about that when we visit places that we spent time as in our youth. There's a little town in South Dakota called Woonsocket, and they have their central area of the city is actually a pond, and I remember it more like a lake with a
Right.
a swimming platform, that you could swim out to and hang out on and that kind of stuff. And we drove through it, and I was talking about, oh yeah, it's really cool. And we get there, and I swear to God, it was so small. I was like, and I was there when I was in like 8th grade, and I was like, they shrunk it. The town swallowed the pond. What the hell happened?
Well, emotions and memories make things bigger, and that's, I think, part of the magic of emotions and memories.
Exactly.
Right? I wouldn't trade that for the world. But yeah, you go back later in adulthood, and they took the shrink ray to it, and it's like, well, that's kind of weird.
So what? Being 7 years old, the transition was probably pretty easy but exciting. Going from suburbia to the woods. But what was it like going to school in Arkansas?
There's a lot of tradition, actually. Again, as I had mentioned, you could walk down Senior Hall and see a picture of my dad and all his brothers and sisters, my grandparents, all my great uncles and aunts. It was a very small school. I think a lot of people can relate to rural schools where you had the same friends from 2nd grade all the way through graduation. And I think I took it for granted, but it was just normal. It was small town life in the South, more churches and gas stations than stoplights. And it was great. I loved it. I was close to my grandparents on both sides of the family. School was challenging. You've known me well enough to know that I'm a talker and I won't shut up. So I early got the Alan won't shut up in school moniker. So the teachers all talk to each other. But about fifth grade, they discovered if they would give me a book, I would shut up. And I was pretty good at reading and remembering. And a lot of early school is just reading and remembering. You're not doing a lot of reasoning or thought at the time. You're just memorizing facts. So they let me go to the library, and I'd go. And so this became a voracious reader. And of course, at the time, it was the Hardy Boys books and all the serial things that are really cool to a 10, 11, 12-year-old. But, I loved it. So most of my school was reading. And that naturally led to things like the creative side. I was in a photography class. I really wanted to be on the radio. I was 14, so they wouldn't let me. And the guy told me, hey, when you're 16, come back with your license. And I showed up at 16 with my FCC disc jockey license and played country music. And I don't know, it was a really comforting small town environment that I'm sure, just like your pond or my stump, isn't nearly as romantic as I remember it. But growing up, it was pretty special. It really was.
Well, that's great because that probably molded you to who you are today. And I know that at some point you got into music yourself, and you were, like we said, band camp. And when did you pick up a musical
Yeah,
instrument?
that was. And again, I'm a big believer that you catch your values from your parents. It was interesting because growing up in the South, there can be prejudice and bias, and the cliches are there for a reason. But living in Southern California, mom and dad knew everybody and all different types of people. So I grew up in a house where people were just people, right? And
Right.
Music was a central part of that. My dad played guitar, so my earliest memories were going to sleep with the window cracked and dad sitting out on the back porch playing Neil Young songs. And now I was a little bit ruined because I grew up thinking Neil Young and Bob Dylan were good singers. And so that has absolutely, but they were passionate and they were unique. And started piano lessons in second grade. And about eighth grade, I played Fear Release so many times, I was just ready to die. And my dad brings out this book of like Neil Young music, songs I'd grown up on. It says, okay, you know the songs, read the guitar chords at the top and just play with me. Don't worry about the music. It doesn't have to be classical. Just play. Another light bulb. It was one of those things where that just really ignited a passion. I was good at music, but that's where I became passionate about music. And so we'd play old hippie songs and new stuff. And then I got into keyboards, and I thought I was a basketball player, but there's a reason why I'm called the Dusty Gnome for a reason. I'm not exactly tall enough to play basketball. So band and music became my family. I was such a nerd. I was a drum major, right? I was like the king of the nerds, but it was family. It was fantastic. And band camp was really interesting. I know we joke about it, but growing up in a small town, it's hard to outgrow who you were in fourth grade. And by the time you're in ninth or 10th grade, you're becoming your own person, but you almost have this character of what everyone's known about you for the last 10 years. So things like going to boys' state or going to band camp or church camp, those were reasons to get out of town and kind of learn who you were. And so I have a lot of really good memories from band camp because I got to learn who I was at that point in life. Yes, I was an extrovert. Yes, I liked people, but it was about the experiences. And so I remember the people a lot more than I remember the music from band camp, because I'm still friends with those people from sophomore year in high school because we had shared experiences.
Right. And
Now, the piano side, though, is what really took me places. We ended up in Nashville. That was one of my favorite places to live. You know how it is. You're going to college. Tomorrow is actually my 33rd wedding anniversary, by the way. So this is germane to the story.
congratulations.
Thank you, sir. I was originally really big into military. I had a Marine Corps ROTC, and I'd been accepted to Boston University. And you got to remember, this is late 80s. And so my hero was Michael P. Keaton from family ties, and I wanted to be an investment banker and all that type of crap. Totally went the opposite direction. But in between my junior and senior year, coming back from band camp, I fell asleep driving. Just ran off the road, wasn't going fast, but I broke my nose, my eye socket, my cheekbone, my lower jaw, went all through the front windshield, and had my jaw wired for 10 weeks. Literally the quietest I have ever been in my entire life.
Right.
And it took wiring my jaws together to get there. But again, that's an area where band came together, but the Marine Corps doesn't want someone with a broken face. You know, you can't jump and do stuff. So last minute, I ended up going to Memphis State on a music scholarship because I was good at that and had an academic scholarship. Gosh, met Jennifer the first couple weeks there, known her 3 months, and proposed, and we'd known each other 8 months when we got married.
Wow.
That was really fun to come back and tell mom and dad, hey, I met a girl in college. Oh yeah, we're engaged. They're like, excuse me, what, did we miss a year or two there? But yeah, just love it. She and I were laughing this morning about how, you know, we were 18 and 19 at the time and just turned 19 and 20 when we got married. And we literally grew up together. So a lot of these adventures, going to Nashville, going to Phoenix, all of that stuff, we've been able to do together. And we're very different people. But again, those differences complement each other. And we've had a lot of fun kind of doing life together.
That's pretty cool. So I thought that you guys grew up together. I mean, like through high school and stuff.
No, had never met till freshman year of college.
Wow. Okay.
We were playing cards. This is a warning to all young people. Be careful going out and playing cards and falling in love, because next thing you know, you're married for 30 plus years. It happens.
So what kind of card game were you playing?
I was big into spades at the time, but she was a big hearts player. And her dad, I love her dad to death. He's 82 now, engineer, played hearts every day at his job. So she grew up with basically a professional hearts player. I had no idea the buzzsaw I was walking into. It didn't help that we were 18 and, you know, you had to take a drink every time you got the queen. And she gave me the queen 5 times in a row. So I was a little inebriated and Twitter-pated all at the same time by the end of that card game.
There you go. So let's talk about that accident, because I know that was pretty life-changing for you, correct?
Oh, it was huge. It literally I went really dark after that. There was a part of me, and I know people, I literally got accused 6 months ago of being toxically optimistic. And so most people know me as the optimist or cheerful, but I mean, my whole life had changed. I had it laid out. Where I was going to school had changed. My relationship with my parents had changed. I thought they were holding on too tight. As a parent, they nearly lost their kid. I see exactly where they were coming from at this point. So just went kind of hardcore, you know, was playing in bands, partied a lot, almost had the mentality that I shouldn't have lived. This is all borrowed time. So what does it matter? And so that age 20, 21, 22, you know, playing in bands, rock and roll lifestyle, I discovered some pharmaceuticals and such. And it was just a very dynamic time that I'm grateful I survived. And gosh, I was in North Dakota. This was the weird stuff you used to do back then. Just got in the car and started driving north, right? Slept in a cornfield in Iowa one night, got to Grand Forks, North Dakota, went into the Kinko's there and said, hey, I work at the Kinko's in Little Rock. Can I stay somewhere? And of course they put me up. And so I spent a couple weeks there and just really thought about life. And I'm like, I'm going to die really soon. I've got a wife who loves me, who I'm not treating well. I'm just getting through day to day. What's really important to me? And a couple of those afternoons of just sitting out, you've been North Dakota, it's nothing for miles, right? This is out in the flat part. And so to just be in the middle of nowhere, to reconnect with that whole kind of sense of adventure, but to do it in the context of your life, that was huge. Got in the car, drove all the way back to Arkansas, apologized to my wife, started trying to make some changes in my life, and have been much, much happier since then. Got involved in church a couple years later, which helped a lot also as far as just structure and guidance and community, and then had kids, and the rest is history. But yeah, I don't know how I made it through those first 3 or 4 years, because post-rec, I was just I was just a mess. I didn't know who I was or what I was supposed to do.
Right. Did you grow up in the church?
Yeah, my grandpa Ivan, who my son Ivan is named after, was a General Baptist preacher. I mean, ran gas stations and drove concrete trucks during the week with his brothers, and then had a literal traditional white single steeple country church with about 7 families in it that I grew up in. And so he would be the church camp. That was some of my, again, adventure memories. He was the church camp director. And so I would go through a week of camp with him. And then we would stay all weekend at camp until like the junior high camp came. You remember the old 3-wheeler death machines?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's what he had. And these were the days where he would just send his 13-year-old grandson out on a death machine and say, be back by dark. And so I would just go out and explore cow pastures and woods and all kinds of amazing things, be back in time, for dinner. And it was good. So church for me was just something you grew up in. I will say emotionally, because I read so much, I got pretty good at just regurgitating the answers. I never had, what today they would call a personal relationship with Christ, or, whatever phrase you want to use from some of the more touchy-feely churches. But it was just a fact and not a lifestyle. So as I outgrew that, it didn't really have a lot to do with my life. But as I got older and had some changes and learned more about a relationship and different aspects than the fire and brimstone, don't do this, don't do that, judgmental side of church I grew up with, that really changed my heart and my life, and really has positively impacted my family and my kids. But yeah, it was drastically different than the church background I grew up with.
Interesting. Okay. So then, when you were in college, what was your field of study?
Well, freshman year was commercial music, which was good, but I sucked at the math. I'm really bad at math. And they had weeder classes such as calculus and advanced calculus and things like that. So I quickly switched to history for my sophomore year. That was easier, right? Read stuff, remember it, draw parallels, make projections so you don't repeat it. That was much easier. But remember, I've been married a year at this point. Jennifer was getting a Bachelor of Fine Arts in painting. She knew exactly what she wanted to do, and I didn't. And I was good at working. My first job was 12 years old, working at the gas station with my dad. Through high school, I literally had a full-time job from 5 to 10 p.m. as a country music DJ, and worked weekends at my dad's station. So after my sophomore year, I just went to work to support a family. And we were very strategic, right? I was delivering pizza. She was working part-time at Walmart and part-time in a movie theater. So as a 20-year-old couple who was 20 years old, we had free food, discounts at Walmart, and free movies. So it was very strategic in where we worked.
Right.
But just started doing that. That's what I was always good at. I grew up with, again, a family with a super strong work ethic that was really impressed upon me. And also this sense of every job's important, right? Just because someone has a leadership role or not doesn't mean they're better or worse than you. Every role in a job is important. And so I just threw myself into that. And then I was playing music with a bunch of bands. My wife and all my bandmates graduated college. That's when we moved to Nashville, and literally gave it a good solid 3-year run of trying to be musicians. Did albums, worked regular day jobs. Didn't have a family yet. So it was pretty exciting in your 20s to go pursue all those dreams and all those passions and do things that you can't always get to do when you have a family or a career or things like that. So Nashville was absolutely a blast. It was the culmination of all of that creative stuff. The band was doing well. Jennifer was selling artwork. And at the time, this was mid-90s, Branson had kind of taken over as a country music capital of the world. So Nashville was in process of rebranding as Music City, USA. So we were like a college alt-rock band. They were very open to all types of musicians, not just country. And that was the period in time where, 90s country music was changing, the industry was changing, and a college rock band could actually flourish in a town like Nashville. It was really, really cool.
So you played a lot of gigs?
Played a lot of gigs, actually got it to do some studio work too, which was really fun. Again, I had classical training, but living in Nashville is where I learned, Nashville notes and shape music and all the little shorthand that the the traditional bluegrass players knew, and there were a lot better piano players than me out there, but I'd kind of fallen in love with the organ, the Hammond B3 organ, living in Memphis like I did, got into blues, jazz, all that type of good stuff. So I get called in to play, if you're listening to some bluesy old song and there's that Hammond organ warbling in the background, there's a good chance I was one of the players on that in the mid 90s, because I loved it. You got to meet different musicians, got to be creative. It was an indoor adventure, if you will. But it was different all the time. Best part about Nashville, though, quite frankly, was the non-famous musicians. You're familiar with In the Round, when people play In the Round?
I've heard of it, yes.
Yeah. Oh, it was cool. You go over to someone's house and someone would pick up a guitar and they just pass it around the circle. And you know what? Everyone would play or sing something and join in. Some of the absolute best songwriters and musicians I've ever met in my life, we would never know their names. They were just studio musicians. They were session musicians, but man, these guys were skilled and they were fun. And it was neat to just sit back and be in awe of other musicians. And that was definitely a time period where I was able to just enjoy high levels of creativity, but more importantly, exceedingly high levels of skill. These guys were really good. I was more of an entertainer than a virtuoso. So don't think I'm putting myself on the pedestal with those guys, but sometimes you can be cool by association. And I had some cool friends back then.
That's pretty awesome. I have one experience with Memphis, and that was the Beale Street Music Festival. And a friend of mine was playing in it, and he said, "Come on down and hang out with us." And that was really a trip to be on stage, or on the edge of the stage, you might say, because I didn't play an instrument, couldn't carry a note in a 10-gallon bucket, and just being in that atmosphere with 4 stages and all the stuff going on, and then after they'd play, we'd head up and hang out at BB King's and some of the other clubs in there, and be celebrities, because you had your passes on.
Right. And to be honest, most musicians aren't celebrities in real life. So it's kind of fun to play being famous for a minute. Exactly. Because most of us were in the band hall back in high school. You know what I mean? So, it was the band camp joke, but here you are being honored.
Right. It was pretty cool. I was wearing my We Rock Security shirt, and yes, I was helping move equipment. Our band was called Allison Hefner Band, and she had been a background singer or backup singer, one of the female singers for Leonard Skinner at one time. And her husband was the guy that started Atlanta Rhythm Section. And
no way.
Yeah, the drummer. And so my buddy Fergie was he had been one of Bob Seger's, who was in the Silver Bullet Band at one time. And there was a whole group of guys that came together that had played professionally, but they were an unsigned band. So to get into the festival, they won a Battle of the Bands contest, which hands down, nobody stood a chance against them. They were, they were all real good pros, but they're last to set up on stage because their music, they're playing first. So as soon as they're done, their equipment peels off real quick, and then the next band is already up there. So we're getting ready for sound checks. We're setting up all the equipment, and I'm wearing this security shirt, but I'm the only one that doesn't have any credentials. And this security guy walks up to Fergie and goes, "Hey, how come that, who's that guy over there?" And Fergie, who was always quick on his feet and did announcing for us in Dayton, Tennessee in our rock crawls. He, Jim Hallegren's his name. He looks over and he goes, "You're security and you don't know who Big Rich from We Rock Security is?" And the guy goes, "Oh, that's Big Rich? Oh yeah, I've heard of him." And this is the head of security, and this guy's, like 7 foot tall, looked like a professional basketball player or something.
Uh-huh.
Big guy. And he comes over to me and he goes, "Hey, let me get you your credentials." And he hands me this all access credentials. And he goes, "Let me take you around to the different stages and introduce you to my group." And so he's taking me around like I'm somebody and I'm like absolutely nobody, right? But it was so fun being able to go anywhere I wanted to because they thought I was some
Hey,
bigwig security guy that did rock bands and stuff like that. It was
I've
hilarious.
name dropped I've name dropped Big Ridge too. I mean, hey, that's like the magic pass key sometimes.
Yeah, right.
Do you know who I know?
My
But yeah,
daughter
I
did
know.
that one time at an event. She was with a couple of the people that, judges and an announcer, and they got pulled over, and we were outside of Jellicoe, Tennessee, and we were doing our event there, and
Uh-huh.
the sheriff pulls them over, and I don't know if they were in Kentucky at that point or if they were in Tennessee, but my daughter goes, "You can't pull us over. Do you know who my dad is?" And everybody else in the car is like, "Megan, shut up." He doesn't care. I
Well, he should care. Did it
Well,
get you
they
out
got
a
a
ticket,
ticket.
or did you get 2 tickets? Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So
Oh, that's
the
great.
music scene. How long did that last?
Well, gosh, probably 96, 97. And at that point was, we'd given it a good 5 year run, kind of semi-professionally. And it, in any career, you're going to make it or you're not. So at that point, that wasn't my future, right? Wasn't going to be a famous rock star. I still play. I played last week. In fact, I picked up an acoustic bass 2 months ago to teach myself a new instrument and learn new songs, but from the perspective of a bass player. So music's something you do your entire life. But career-wise, it was pretty evident around age 26 or 27 that wasn't going to be my future. Jennifer and I were just starting to talk about having a family at the time, and so I kind of transitioned to working. Again, was always really good at that. Hollywood Video back in the day, Kinko's. I probably worked for 6 years and started as the overnight guy, and eventually became a district manager. And that's always been kind of my MO at work. Start at entry level, work hard, prove who you are, and then be able to move up pretty rapidly. Uh, but on the flip side, from a leadership perspective, I knew how to do all the roles. I had paid my dues. I had kind of come up through the channels, and so I don't know. It was just a really good formula that worked for me. The difference, though, when we moved to North Little Rock, this is kind of funny. You'll get a kick out of this. In your head, you're this famous Nashville musician, and they needed a piano player at church. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. I mean, come on. And they're like, well, you have to audition. Well, I'm all kinds of like, what do you mean I have to audition? I know Big Rich. Do you not know who Big Rich is? Why are you making me audition? And to be able to go that route. But again, my arrogant little ass is like, I'll show them. And I sequence background music and all this type of stuff and show up. And I swear, I went to play, and it's like I had feet for hands. It was like I had never seen a piano before in my life. It was terrible, a train wreck. We get done, they're looking at me, and they're like, well, we can always use help in our kids department. I'm like, what? But that was perfect because I started playing. A, it was very humbling, but B, it helped me kind of understand music usually isn't about you. It's about others and creating an environment and creating somewhere where other people can have adventures. That's what music always was to me. Very close to off-roading, quite frankly. I know they're very different skill sets, but the rush I get from them are the same. You're alone. You're experiencing something. Only you can really internalize what you're feeling while it's going on. You can try to tell stories. No one's ever going to know what taking the green flag at Hammers feels like until they take the green flag at Hammers, right? No one's going to know what playing music at a 14-year-old's funeral is going to feel like until you played music at a 14-year-old's funeral. So there was just a lot of growth there. I spent about 10 years playing in churches. By the end, we were at one of the big mega churches in Phoenix, Christ Church of the Valley. Really, really good church, focused on families and growth. But I mean, we'd play 5 services over the weekend, and there would be 4,000 people per service. So, you're playing for 20, 25,000 people over the weekend, but it's in church, in context of helping people worship. And that was great. I enjoyed that too. Then as the kids got older and I started getting into off-roading, it's kind of hard to have more than one all-consuming hobby at a time. And so we still go. I still play regularly, but yep, around 2008, 2009 was when I stopped playing in groups publicly, whether church or private.
So the transition from Arkansas to Arizona, how did that come about?
Oh gosh, I had never even been to Arizona until 2 weeks before I started my job out there. Because again, I was out. I was in retail for about 10 years. Out playing golf from a buddy from church who said, "You talk a lot. Have you considered sales?" No, but I'm getting a little tired of working every holiday and every weekend. Let's see what this is about. And they owned a computer company and they were selling dental software, which I'd barely even gone to a dentist myself, much less understood that profession. But it was a challenge. It was something new. I've been in dentistry 24 years now since then. So obviously it stuck. It was something good for me, but it was the technology side. So I got to learn all about computers and networks, but more importantly, I got to learn about people and get into what I call consultative selling. A very natural extension of how I grew up, of just wanting to help people. You'd listen to them and then you'd match your products to what they needed. I enjoyed it, but starting at zero every single month on commission sales is a hard way to live. And my kids were 3 and 5 at the time, and I got an opportunity to work for a consulting firm. So I was able to take my business background and my dental background and be salaried, not be on commission sales. They had several different offices all across the U.S. They had one in Seattle and Chicago and Atlanta and Phoenix and Santa Barbara. And Jennifer and I are like, you know what? The kids are 3 and 5. If we're going to make a move for work, this is the time to do it before they're too entrenched. Seattle was too rainy. Chicago was too cold. Atlanta was too humid. So we just randomly went, Phoenix sounds nice. Interviewed, got the job, moved out to Phoenix, and then just fell in love. We spent 12 years out in Phoenix. That's where the kids helped grow up. Still, my best friends in the world are all in Phoenix and the Arizona area. But yeah, it was just, I have heard when you move to Phoenix in the summer, like for people who show up for school and stuff, and it's 1,000,000 degrees, you hate it forever. But we moved in February, so we kind of got slow heated into it. And just the desert reminded me so much of the wilderness when I was a kid. Because you lose a lot of that as you get older, right? You live in urban areas and there's cities and jobs and airports and hotels and all that type of stuff. So being able to just go out in the desert, out at Table Mesa, out at Florence Junction, stuff like that, just became a wonderful escape and a chance to be a kid again, where you're out exploring something. Because drastically different, the desert versus all the green and blue and water and all the stuff. Plus, everything in the desert is trying to kill you. So that added a whole, another level. Hey, you see that tree? It has spikes and it's trying to kill you. Hey, you see that cactus? It's jumping at you. That bird in the sky is carrying a snake that's going to drop on you, and then they're both going to eat you. The desert is very much a place of perceived survival and adventure, which, again, when you have an overactive imagination, when you used to be Daniel Boone or Davy Crockett as a kid, it's super easy to fall in love with the Southwest. And we started going to Moab and Zion and Johnson Valley and stuff like that. But some of my absolute favorite times. And frankly, that's where I had the big lifestyle change from music and working to off-roading and then eventually racing, which led me to photography. So they all worked together, but Phoenix was just amazing, drastically different than anything Jennifer and I had known. We had no family out there, so it really brought our family close together. We'd go down to Tombstone with the kids, you go up to the Grand Canyon. It had all kinds of activities for families. And I don't know, I look back and it was probably one of the best things for bonding our family, was kind of being on our own out in Phoenix and relying on each other.
Right. And so when you were a kid, you got some three-wheeler action with your grandfather. And then when you get to Phoenix, you get back into off-road somehow. Was there any off-road
Well,
in between?
there really wasn't.
Okay.
It was just work, Now, what was in between was a motorcycle.
Oh,
And I made the classic mistake of my motorcycle being my primary form of transportation. So, coming home from work one day, a little old lady in a Lincoln Town Car didn't see me, and Lincoln Town Car and a Honda Nighthawk is not a fair, contest. So shattered my whole left knee, had to put a whole left kneecap in, stuff like that. Uh, just like I'm a little shy about falling asleep while driving, a little paranoid about motorcycles now.
right.
So when we moved to Arizona, the weather's perfect. Most of I'm probably used to be 120,000 miles a year on airplanes, right? I flew everywhere for consulting. So that's where I discovered my first Jeep. It was basically a motorcycle, but with a roll cage. It resonated with me because I could take the top and doors off and all that type of jazz. But I had a harness. I had a roll cage. I didn't feel like even if I got hit, I was going to be back in the hospital again. Of course, you're invincible when you drive a Jeep, so that's very natural. But that's what I started doing, and it was your classic starter Jeep, right? The really crappy chrome parts on it, and you go down the crap aisle at AutoZone with a magnet, and that all sticks on your Jeep. It was an old YJ, but I didn't care. It introduced me to that uh, side of things, and then just opened up a really amazing group of friends with Higher Ground 4x4. Michael Dobby, who's one of the best photographers I've ever met in my life. A lot of people know Bob McNeely, Fat Bob, big beard, just one of the nicest, kindest human beings on the face of the planet. Chris, Daniel, we just had a tight little group. And so that's where I learned to wheel, was just going out. And this was when, 33s were big, and one of you, oh, let's get 35s. Ooh, we all get 35s. And then we have to get new axles, and wouldn't imagine 37s. And only those crazy rock crawler guys with water in their tires had 40s. But what was so great about it was there was an entry level for anybody. And it brought back a lot of that. I'm a 12-year-old on grandpa's three-wheeler again. Exactly how I felt. Just going out and taking trips and spending time with the guys. And then my Dave Cole screwed everything up for me.
How do you figure that?
Because he decided to have the everyman challenge.
Ah,
And that happened to coincide with my 40th birthday. And what's better than being a race car driver and having a midlife crisis? It worked perfectly. So it was awesome. That was going to be my 40th birthday party. My birthday is February 17th. So we were out there for hammers. So the whole Jeep club built our first Jeep together. This was the very first year for the EMC, so no one knew what they were doing. The Rants and I became really good friends through that whole process, and I got addicted. It was absolutely fantastic. And then this other crack dealer company was there, named Big Rich and Shelley, running Dirt Riot, and I knew I didn't have the skill set or the money to run Ultra 4, but I fell in love with Dirt Riot. You guys actually are very pivotal to my just entire friend base right now, because that's where I rediscovered that family, that same family I had when I was playing music. I rediscovered that family in off-road. And Dirt Riot, for those of you that don't know, was just a fantastic series that was a developmental league, right? They were 6 to 7 mile race courses, but you learned how to race. You learned how to be good sportsmen. You learned how to prep your team. You got ass and seat time, which is so critical. But, guys like Lauren Healy were running it at the time too, Andrew McLaughlin. It was just really a neat place without having to be all the pressure of King of the Hammers, where you could just really lose yourself in this racing community. That, in a way, and I don't mean this bad, kind of ruined rec wheeling for me, because I got addicted to the go fast part. I got addicted to the suspension. I got addicted to what's the fastest way through this. And I'm still in love with racing. I've had touches with short course. I've had touches with desert racing. I've had touches with, all kinds of things. But my first love is just still that kind of Dirt Riot, go fast, grassrootsy vibe, because that's what I fell in love with. That's where I met Andrew and the whole Let's Roll crowd. That's where I met Charlene. Gosh, I owe her a ton in this too. But yeah, I fell in love. That truly became my passion, was off-roading there in that 2012, 2013, 2014 time period, just because, again, I had found a family in the dirt at that point. The racing was almost secondary. It was fun. Don't get me wrong. We really went after it hardcore. But, as you well know, Ivan was becoming 13, 14 years old at the time. So I'd take him to the track with me, and those road trips to and from Cedar City were probably some of our best times of just bonding as father and son. He's like me. He didn't have a lot of girlfriends, shall we say. So I tried my hardest to prop him up as a race car driver during the summer, but even that didn't help him, get dates in high school. So it was worth a shot.
So you went to the Hammers and competed before hooking up with Let's Roll?
Well, it was interesting because I knew of Let's Roll, because again, the Arizona Jeep community is very tight, and there were a lot of kind of crossovers at the time. The Arizona Virtual Jeep Club was kind of the melting pot, where you had a little bit of the Venn diagram overlap of the hardcore wheelers. I don't think overlanding was a word yet, but you had your campers and your more recreational people, and we knew each other, but we didn't run in the same circles. He was part of the Undertakers, which were just
trail ninjas.
Oh, they're freaking amazing. I love those guys. It's one of the biggest honors to get to be inducted as a part of the Undertakers. So I have my shovel, and I will do whatever needs to be done. But Andrew, hearing Andrew tell the story is a little funnier than me tell the story, but Let's Roll was still out of his garage there at the house.
Right.
He had run with Chad a couple times as a co-driver. So Andrew wanted to get into racing. So 4,400. He had one of his customers who wanted to build a stock class car, and I was building a 4,500. This is before Legends or the side-by-side classes all came in. It was early days of evolving out past 4,400.
Was that Sean Passmore?
Yeah, Sean Passmore.
Okay.
And you remember Sean. So Andrew just reached out saying, hey, you are going to be racing the 4,500 class. I would like for my shop to field a team in multiple classes. I think that'll be good for my business. Do you want to kind of join forces? I'm like, hey, that'd be great, because I'll say it here loud and clear and proud. I'm a musician, a photographer, a computer guy. I'm not a fabricator. If your life depended upon it, do not give me a welder. I probably could not light a cigarette with fire from one. It's just.
Hey, you and I are in the same boat.
Oh, I am just in awe at these guys that can take metal and pipe and build it and make things just beautiful, because I don't have that skill set. The engineering, the craftsmanship. So this was a whole new world for me to get introduced to fabrication shops. So I met 30 Pack Matt, got introduced to Shannon Campbell. A lot of my heroes and stuff I met through Andrew. So in a way, it was just to round it out. And I was hooked. He was hooked. Sean Passmore was hooked. So we decided we were going to race Dirt Riot that year. And the first race after Hammers, again, my very first time to ever take a green flag was King of the Hammers. Gosh, how I'm not dead, I don't know. But it was down in Tucson. And this was 2013. And Charlene was teaching these marketing classes for your drivers, which, again, I thought was brilliant. Part of the joy of Dirt Riot was you not only got to race, but you got to learn and network and do it in a place where the stage wasn't so big it was make or break every time.
Right.
And she was in a room with all of us, and she's like, okay, who's the one person on your team who never puts their phone down, won't shut up, and can't build anything? And they all laughed and pointed to me, and I'm like, I roll with it. I've got a pretty good self-depreciating sense of humor. And she goes, you're pointing at the most important person on your team. And they were all like, what? She goes, you guys can do everything you want to do, but if no one tells your story, how are they going to know? if you want to be racing, there's a lot more to it. There's two sides of it. And so she really invested in me, invested in Andrew. I remember once we were prepping cars and I was underneath the Jeep and I heard one of the guys in the shop talk about, why is Alan this? Why is Alan that? And Andrew, God bless him, didn't know I was down there. And he goes, guys, he's the one who works with our sponsors. He's the one who tells our stories. He's one of the most important parts of why we get to race and why it's funded. He may not have your skill set, you don't have his, but we're all a team. And that made me feel so valued and so not an outsider. Because again, everyone here can weld and do gear ratios and just all kinds of amazing things I can't. And that was the first time I really felt valued for the skill set I did have in the off-road industry now, but at the time on a team. So I give a lot of that. I always acknowledge Charlene as kind of the one that opened doors for me, both emotionally, but helped put me in an environment with the Let's Roll team where I could grow. Now, of course, in those early days, it was hysterical because unless you won the race or your last name was Campbell, you never got any pictures. Michael Dobby from Higher Ground would take some pictures of us racing, but after a while, that was kind of bad to keep asking your friends to come out for free and take pictures. So I asked him to teach me. And so I would go out, I'd run 4,500, we'd have these epic battles. I'd hop out of the car, grab my camera, and then go out and shoot 4,400 class. So we would have some kind of content for newsletters and newsletters and the social media pages and stuff like that. And, people oftentimes, particularly as they get older, like I'm getting, you look back on golden ages and stuff, but that 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, for me, that was kind of my golden age because I was racing, I was discovering off-road, I was getting introduced to just absolute legends like Bob Bauer and others who I didn't have the history to know who they were. I got introduced to them as Bob and then got to know them. Like, oh my God, I'm hanging out with freaking legends.
Right.
It was I was at the Ormhoff event last year, for their gala, and was surprised how many people I knew in the room. But I knew them because they were out in the desert with the rest of us. It has always amazed me, comparing and contrasting this to the musical world. If you were a musician, you could hang with other musicians. That was pretty good. But there wasn't a lot of crossover between the super famous bands and just regular musicians. But in off-roading, everyone was dirtying around the campfire and hanging out and telling stories. And you could literally be next to a legend and not even know it because just so genuine, so down to earth. And then someone else would come up going, "Do you realize who you were just talking to?" "Yeah, Shannon. He's in Gilbert. He's the greatest." Okay, I love him. But I don't know. It was just really neat because I was older, maybe because I had experienced a couple different things, but I just instantly connected to the people side of the adventure. I love the racing. This is my chance to say for the kids out there, I was Dirt Riot National Champion 2 years in a row. Thank you very much in the 4,500 class. My stories begin with once upon a time instead of back in the day, but I still have my Dirt Riot National Championship trophies and some of that other types of stuff because, again, it was just fun. It was escape. We would work all week long. I'm raising kids. I'm married, and Rich, you've been married a long time too. You wouldn't trade it for the world, but every day is not puppy dogs and rainbows. You have to work at your relationship, and racing and off-roading in general and just that entire community really provided strong friendships and a foundation and an escape where I could still be me and not be defined by my work role or my spousal role or my parental role. So it was pretty awesome. And it led to a lot of opportunities when I got done racing.
So how, since you ended it there with, how you did, how did that transition go from racer to working with the promoters?
It was pretty interesting. At my day job, which again was at Mercer Advisors at the time, they used to have this class during the summer called Young and Motivated that was geared towards 13 to 17-year-olds. They come in, they teach them about investing, money, geometric progression. I mean, things that, you know, you didn't know what compounding interest was at 15, but you know what? If you learned, it helped make you good life decisions. And very vividly remember them always asking, hey, okay, who here wants to be a professional athlete? You know, half the room would go up. They're like, well, maybe one of you are going to be a professional athlete. And you're like, well, that's awfully depressing. Why are you guys being assholes like that? They're like, but just because you can't be a professional baseball player doesn't mean you can't be involved in professional baseball. Consider sports medicine, consider sports writing, this and that. And it was a connection for me that you can be engaged in your passion in different roles. So during the time period when I was racing actively, and between you and me, my opinion, and no one can change my mind, races are won or lost in between the races. It's all about the prep. It's about getting your vehicle ready. It's about getting your mind ready. And I was just too busy to prep in between races. And so I was starting to DNFs, and DNFs were not fun. And off-roading was supposed to be fun. So my transition was sold a race car. But because I've been doing photography and because I tell stories, Driving Line picked me up. And so I got to go to all the races, see all my friends, take pictures and tell stories, and I actually made money. I remember my wife was shocked the first time I came back from an event and didn't have $6,000 to $10,000 worth of repairs. It's like, wait a minute, you could have been making money this whole time? And I'm like, I know. Who knew?
And still, you started driving the Toyota, the FJ.
Oh,
but anyway, that's a different story.
the FJ death trap's a whole different conversation. And again, I'm on, I think, life number 8. There's a part of me that's being more cautious because I've burned through my first 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lives without really thinking about it. I'm going to be a little more careful these days, but it was fun. And that's where I started working more with the promoters, because my job was to help tell the story of something I was passionate about and loved. And part of that was from the driver perspective. Part of that was from the organization perspective. Part of that was just because, you know, I like telling stories. And these were the race results you could go read online, but the struggle to get there, or the family stories, or the guy who brought his dad out for a race and he ended up podiuming them, and to be able to see the look on the dad's face, you know, as they're lifting Dizzy up on his shoulders and riding him around. I just fell in love with that. So I was able to keep all the good parts of the racing community, which was the friendships and the relationship, and still be involved. Now, gosh, I did that for probably 3 or 4 years, and ironically was in San Diego for a business trip, and got a call from Dave Cole, who said that Shannon had left, and he wanted to talk to me because I always volunteered. I've talked about several of my heroes in Charlene. Shannon Welch was another one that really poured into me early because I was a volunteer, and she could see that I loved what I was doing. And then Emily Miller is just the pinnacle to me. I just am in awe of her professionalism, her creativity. So she would run the media tent at Hammers. And so I wanted to be to that level, you know, so I would study what she would do. She was well prepared. She always had the press releases going out. She had a team. You could tell she was passionate about it, but she was actually very professional at it as well. So when Dave called and said that Shannon had left, would I be interested in helping Ultra 4, you know, part-time with the communication and marketing side? I'm like, dude, I'm an hour and a half south of you. I'll be at your house in 2 hours. And I got a rental car, drove up to Temecula, met with Dave, and in a way kind of got my dream job there for a while, which was doing the marketing and social media and promotion for Ultra 4. And did that part-time for 3 years, and then did it full-time for a year. Finally left my dental background and really got to do that. So that was really neat because, again, it combined everything I loved, telling stories, helping people, off-road, adventure. Got to go to Europe a couple times for Ultra 4 Europe. And so had become friends with like Jim Marsden and Mike Robertson and all those guys who had come over for Hammers. So when I would go over to the UK, I got to stay at Jim's house. You know, Mike Robertson would let me stay with him and his wife, and they would drive me around. And how does a kid from Arkansas get to go to London and get paid for it, except through off-road and telling stories and friendships? And so, again, I go back, and so many of my life adventures go back to getting into racing and making international friends and people with different lifestyles and just being connected to the community. That really, really energized me.
And now you're back into the dental world?
Now I'm a mess, Rich. I'm 52. My body's falling apart. I don't know what I want in life. No, ended up getting recruited back to dental. I'm really good at that. Frankly, I've spent 2 decades in understanding business, dental software, something that changed in that industry. Again, I know I'm a little bit of a nerd here, but remember, band camp. So what's to be expected? Uh, Group practices started emerging. So instead of the traditional family dentist that was just a dentist and maybe their kids got out of school and then father and son or father and daughter ran it, started seeing a consolidation in the business there in the early 2000s. So groups of doctors would get together and form a dental company to get better, pricing. Then it grew and it grew and it grew. And now you've got, Heartland Dental, for instance, has over 3,000 dental practices in their organization. Well, that created a whole new economic landscape when it came to software. And again, typing saved my dad's life. Having to take typing and learn computers has really shaped my life. I was on the leading edge of helping build cloud-based practice management software. So it's not terribly exciting. When you go to the dentist, they're typing on their computer and they do your appointment, they file your insurance. Well, someone has to build and sell and train that software. And so I really had a tremendous opportunity to help build a new type of software for an industry. Wasn't nearly as cool as off-roading, but I still got to travel a lot and got to meet a lot of different people in the industry. So just like I'm not a welder and you don't want me welding in the off-road industry, I'm not a dentist. You do not want me working on your teeth. You will get the same result as if I tried to build your cage, man. Someone's going to die. But there's a lot of parallels. And so it was like getting paid to go to college. I was learning all kinds of new things about networking and cloud development, but really I was solving real life problems with how can technology make life easier. So again, it resonated back on that core theme in my life of, how can I help? How can I make things better? How can I be a positive impact? And I know it's weird. It's just dental industry and it's just software, but I loved it. I really did. Of course, it was very good to the family. There's no way you're going to compare off-road photographer with vice president of marketing and communication for a multi-billion-dollar company, right? They're two different economic statuses. And, through church, we got really connected with Dave Ramsey and his philosophies of, being debt-free and not being a slave to debt. And it took us years to get in debt, but those corporate jobs allowed us to pay off our debt and put money away and pay cash for cars and pay cash for the kids' schools. And as I mentioned earlier, tomorrow's our anniversary. We owe probably about $4,000 left on our home, and we're going to pay off our home for our 33rd wedding anniversary. So we have absolutely zero debt. Well, dentistry helped make that happen. But it was also a flexible enough job that while I was doing that, I could go to all the Ultra 4 races. I could go to We Rock. I could go to NORA, which we did in 2014, which, God, I'm still just in love with Baja. That is such a magical place.
Yep.
I think that's my next out in the woods with my grandpa's three-wheeler, to use that analogy. There's so much in Baja that I only got a taste of. I can't wait till life gets me to a point where I can explore that the same way I got to explore Arizona or I got to explore, California. I'm quite smitten with the Baja bug right now from the adventure and the unknown aspect. I know zillions of people have been down there, but I haven't. And that's part of that inner child is your Daniel Boone or Davy Crockett again. And you're getting to explore where no one's been before. And I'm thrilled by that.
Sounds like you need a Raptor.
I do, Rich. You know that. But hey, it's funny. I when the Gladiators came out, and again, I'm a big fan of you do you. That's part of where you catch your values at home.
Right.
I've got my preferences and things that I like and don't like. I've got my beliefs and my faith and decisions that we have made as a family. But that's us, and you do you. But there was one point in my life, because I'm a Jeep guy, hands down. That's what I got started in this. I love that it's an adult tinker toy, and I can take the top off and the doors off and put it back on and configure. And I can have a badass crawler, or I can have stuff from the junk aisle at AutoZone. It doesn't matter. It's your thing. But I was driving a Toyota, FJ Cruiser at the time, better gas mileage, IFS. I was doing photography. An FJ Cruiser is a great photographer rig. You can grab several buddies, put all your gear in the back, go bombing through the desert, and stay in front of the race cars. It was a very intentional decision. But at the time, Ultra 4 had brought on Ford, and they were launching the Bronco. So here I am, a Jeep guy driving a Toyota, promoting Broncos. It was the most conflicted I ever was in my life. So now that I have more choices, I'm back to a Jeep Gladiator, and all is right with the world, and my chakra is aligned because I'm a Jeep guy who drives a Jeep.
There you
So
go.
that's where I'm at. I love the Raptors. The Bronco Raptors are amazing. The F-150 Raptors. I mean, that's the other thing. The nerd in me has just absolutely been blown away with how technology has partnered with good, solid mechanical skill sets and fabrication to create these hybrid vehicles that are just mind blowing. They just are. The active shock technology I'm fascinated by. I realize it's not the day where you can just go take your Raptor out under the shade tree and work on it like you could with a late 70s Ford, but it does a lot more than a late 70s Ford. So you take the good with the bad, and those Raptors are just absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
That being said,
the older you get and the more you hurt, the Raptor's a great vehicle.
Isn't that the truth?
It's like driving a Cadillac.
It's okay being old. I don't mind driving a couch with four-wheel drive.
There you go.
But it's interesting. Back to Emily Miller. Again, she has continued to just be a mentor through all these different phases. She was always someone that I could call or talk to or give me advice, good, bad, and ugly, right? That's part of the beauty of Emily. She speaks truth in love, but she speaks truth. I believe I may have the privilege of joining you this fall, being a media driver for the Rebelle Rally.
That would be awesome.
Dude, that has been a dream of mine ever since I heard it. But I had my own race schedules, both with Ultra 4 and then eventually, with the Mid-America stuff, or I was still going to trade shows and jazz. And this is bringing it back around. I'm back in dental now, but for the first time, I'm not on the selling side. I don't work for one of the dental companies. I actually work for one of the dental organizations, Imagine Dental Partner. They're based actually out of Scottsdale. Goes way back to a lot of friends and people I knew when I was doing consulting. But I'm now actually on the business side of things, not the vendor side of things.
There you go.
And not only has it been fascinating to look at life through the, oh my God, did I used to do that to people as a sales guy lens? But I've got regular hours, and I'm not on demand of when I get a sales call or something blows up. So I'm really looking forward to, I'm going to go back and use an analogy that our pastor at CCV used to use. He said, imagine life as a piece of paper, and most people fill it from top to bottom, left to right. There's not a blank space anywhere. He goes, but life happens in the margins. You have to leave some space in your life for things to happen. And that just really resonated with me because I was always so freaking busy, even though it was fun. I mean, gosh, you lived life on the road, putting on events. You got done with one, you barely got a chance to enjoy it before you were already moving to the next one and promoting one 3 months down the road and making plans for next year.
True.
So there was a lot of stuff I did that I don't feel I got a chance to enjoy as much as when it wasn't my full-time gig. So things like being able to be a media driver for the Rebelle Rally, to have that choice. I'm still working really hard to talk her into letting me do it. She hasn't said yes yet, but I can be persistent. That's what I'm really loving about off-road now. Getting to pick and choose the events, still have the family, still have the sense of adventure and amazement and awe that I had when I first got in it. But now I've got some more margin in my life. I'm not busy from dusk till dawn, Sunday through Saturday. And so I can pick and choose to go do things that I enjoy. And I've always wanted to be a part of the Rebelle.
So your future, you hope, is getting time spent in Baja, being on the Rebelle, and what else?
Taking pictures, man. It's kind of a joke, but you lived through this too, right? Cause I would shoot pictures with you at Dirt Riot and stuff. And I was very proud of them. I'm learning my skill set. And again, God bless my amazing wife. She said it as only a loving wife can say. I'm showing her all my pictures. Look what I did. And she pats me on the shoulder and she's like, honey, I love you. And nothing good happens from the condescending pat and honey, I love you conversation. And she's like, after about the third car, they all look the same to me. It's just not her gig. That's not what she
Right.
does. She doesn't know the people. So I'm getting all excited about IFS versus solid axle and look at this. And she's like, yeah, that's nice. But then she happened to see, actually, it was a picture of Shelly. She goes, oh, who's that? I'm like, oh, that's Shelly. That's Big Rich's wife. Oh, you talk about her all the time. So then I started taking people pics. And it's amazing that that's kind of become the little niche that I have fallen into, partially because I love it. So I'm looking for people and I want really authentic, not posed, just in the moment pictures because there's so much emotion in off road. Some of it's elation, some of it's just absolutely crushed because you prepped for this and you made it 2 miles and now your car is out of the race and 6 months of your life is gone. But I started taking people pics and that became one of my absolute favorites. And I joked with Barbara Rainey, again, just another absolute legend that I never would have gotten to meet if I wasn't in this ecosystem. And she was asking me once, what do I want to be as a photographer? And I said, you know what? Everything you do with Off-Road Motorsports Hall of Fame, I love the old pictures and stuff that come up, especially the old people pics. That's my goal, Rich. 50 years from now, when people are looking back on all the stuff we do, I want them to find some of the old Allen pictures of people and have a glimpse into what the culture was really like, what the experience was really like. I think Jane Boyd's really good at that too. Jane's one of my heroes. I think Will Gentile tells great stories, but just the pictures, the exhaustion, the smile, the elation, the when we were younger, even I'm looking at those pictures going, shit, I didn't have nearly as much gray back then. Now I'm pretty silver. So I think that's part of what I want to do is still go to events, still travel, still have that sense of adventure, whether it's Baja or local events or the Rebel. I just want to tell those stories. I want other people to get a glimpse into what I love so much so that maybe it inspires them. They don't have to be a professional rock crawler. They don't have to be a professional racer. They can get in their Raptor and go to a Raptor get together and create community and family and go running dirt roads and have just as great a time as, someone in a $1 million trophy truck. It's just different degrees of adventure. And I like telling those stories. That's what I want to do. If I ever get to the point to where I'm fully retired, I just want to travel and tell stories, specifically around racing and off-road. But life happens in the margins, and those are the stories I want to tell.
Wow. That's been awesome. That's great. You're a hell of a storyteller.
Well, that's my dream.
Yeah.
And in between, life, both kids are finally in serious relationships right now. So that could be completely derailed if I end up with a couple weddings in the next year or two and grandkids. But isn't that the fun of off-roading or of life? You don't really know what's over the next hill. And so let's go find out, and so life is very similar like that. So I'm enjoying the journey. Racing was certainly a strong part of it, just like music was, just like everything else. But that common theme is just people and adventure and community. And that's the future for me.
That is awesome. Alan, I want to say thank you for being a friend all these years. You were always someone that was easy to talk to and always had great insight. And that's why you were sought out by people like you have been. And it's been an honor to consider you and call you a friend.
That means a lot, Rich. You and Shelly both are near and dear friends, and you've helped shape my life as well. So thanks for having me tell a little bit of my story. I look forward to seeing you again soon, and hopefully we'll both drive media around this fall.
Well, you'll get to drive media. I get to be course crew.
Oh gosh,
I get to drag the course afterwards to make sure everybody gets back to camp.
Well, I'll try to save you a cold one when you get there.
I appreciate it.
No promises. No promises.
Hey, Alan, thank you so much for spending the time on this conversation, and it was definitely my pleasure.
It was my pleasure, Rich. Thank you so much. Have a great day, man.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, that's another episode of Conversations with Big Rich. I'd like to thank you all for listening. If you could do us a favor and leave us a review on any podcast service that you happen to be listening on, or send us an email or a text message or a Facebook message, and let me know any ideas that you have, or if there's anybody that you have that you think would be a great guest, please forward the contact information to me so that we can try to get them on. And always remember, live life to the fullest. Enjoying life is a must. Follow your dreams and live life with all the gusto you can. Thank you.